You don't think about the food system when you buy groceries, because most of the time, it just works. Food shows up. Shelves are stocked. Prices move. But not too much. It feels stable. But zoom out, and what looks simple is actually one of the most complex systems in the world. Because food doesn't really start on farms. It starts with energy, with chemicals, with materials pulled from the ground and moved across the world. Food doesn't start on farms anymore. It starts in energy markets. Modern agriculture runs on fuel. Fuel for tractors. Fuel for irrigation. Fuel to move food thousands of miles before it ever reaches you. But more importantly, fuel for something most people never think about. Fertilizer. Most modern agriculture depends on 3 key inputs: nitrogen, phosphate, and potash. Nitrogen fertilizer is the most important and the most fragile because it isn't just mined, it's manufactured. Nitrogen fertilizer is made using natural gas, not just to power the process, but as the core ingredient itself. Natural gas is transformed into ammonia, and ammonia becomes fertilizer, which means a huge portion of the global food supply depends directly on energy markets. So now the food system depends on something else entirely, a global energy network that has to keep flowing every single day. And a large part of that energy moves through a few narrow points on the map, places most people never think about, like the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow stretch of water, where a massive share of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas flows through, especially from countries like Qatar. If that flow is disrupted, even temporarily, energy prices don't just rise, they spike. And when natural gas prices spike, fertilizer becomes expensive to produce. In some cases, it becomes too expensive to produce at all. Factories shut down, supply tightens, prices surge. We've already seen this happen. During the 2022 global fertilizer crisis, natural gas prices in Europe surged so high that fertilizer plants were forced to shut down. Production dropped, and fertilizer prices skyrocketed around the world. When fertilizer becomes expensive or scarce, farmers are forced to adjust. They use less of it. They delay purchases, or they simply can't afford what they need. And that leads to the next step in the system. Lower fertilizer use means lower crop yields. Not everywhere at once, not instantly, but enough to matter. Because modern crop yields are heavily dependent on fertilizer. Without it, production doesn't just dip slightly, it can fall significantly. And food doesn't stay where it's grown. It moves across oceans, across borders, across entire continents. So when yields fall in one part of the world, the effects spread. Global supply tightens, prices rise. But here's where the system becomes uneven. Food doesn't disappear. It flows to wherever it's priced highest, which means the people who feel it first aren't necessarily the ones producing the food. It's the countries that rely on imports, places like North Africa, parts of the Middle East, and regions of sub-Saharan Africa. Countries that depend heavily on imported grain and imported fertilizer, and often don't have the financial flexibility to absorb price spikes. When food prices rise sharply in those regions, it's not just an economic issue, it becomes a stability issue. We've seen this before. The 2007 to 2008 food crisis led to food riots in multiple countries. And rising food prices were one of the underlying pressures during the Arab Spring. Because when a large portion of a population spends a significant share of their income on food, even small increases matter, and large increases change everything. This isn't about one event, or one choke point, or one decision. It's about how everything connects. Energy becomes fertilizer. Fertilizer becomes food. Food becomes price. And that system doesn't fail all at once. It tightens. It gets more expensive. And it gets harder to hold together. Until eventually, you start to notice it. Not as a headline, but as higher prices, tighter supply, more volatility. Food doesn't fail all at once. The system does. And most of the time, you don't see it happening. Until you do. This is just the beginning.